Greetings, lore seekers, and welcome back to more Star Wars Legends lore. So today we're going to be covering another force group, and this one will be a bunch of Sith Wannabes, also known as the Believers. So the cult was founded in the waning years of the Old Republic, and really came to prominence shortly after the Battle of Naboo, gaining many new members and various locations. In fact, it was able to avoid a lot of attention by mostly sticking to one system, the Recursion system, of which they operated on two planets in this system, the planet Recursion and Almas, and also operating in a few cities on another planet, Generis. Alright, yep, you can punish me for that later, seeing as it is a very generic sounding name. Eventually the cult did gain more attention in the wider galaxy, and more rumours were speculated and new members would join them, but they were mostly ignored by the Jedi, as the Jedi assumed they were just a rumour or didn't exist. Though considering the amount of dark side factions that were around shortly before the Clone Wars, they could have been mistaken for various other members of them. So, what was the main reason for the start of the Order / cult? Well, two main reasons. One was to study the ancient ways of the dark side and eventually the secrets of the Sith. Number two was to defeat the Jedi Order and bring back the ancient order of Sith. Not realising that, the Sith were still active in the galaxy, but hiding. All the while waving certain dark side appendages right in front of the Jedi Council's face. Oh, Palpatine. Now, later in the video I will speculate on their eventual fate under the new order of Palpatine, but before, a little bit of history. So, the cult did get up to a lot during the Clone Wars and did cause problems for the Jedi, including the Jedi training ground that was on Almas, and they tried to do this by poisoning the very planet itself. But I am getting a little bit ahead of myself, because I should probably tell you how they actually gained the planet Almas as one of their strongholds. Because Almas itself is home to an ancient Sith fortress which became their base of operations, and while they were there and studying the fortress, they were able to decipher lost secrets from the new Sith War era. Specifically, the Battle Lord techniques and rituals that the Sith Darth Revan invented. Now, Darth Revan is a figure who was named after Darth Revan. He wanted to emulate Revan, but considering the texts he had were corrupted, this was also a corrupted version of Revan's name. So instead of calling himself Darth Revan in honour of Revan, he named himself Darth Revan. Oh, corrupted Sith texts certainly do cause problems for people. But I'll cover that in its own video. The cult were able to discover secrets that were lost even to the Sith Order itself, and they would try to use these to their advantage, some with disastrous consequences, some with hilariously bad consequences, including the depowering of some of its members, but that will be getting its own video again. Initially they didn't have Almas as one of their primary bases, and this actually is a good time for me to explain the hierarchy and how the Believers' organisational structure worked. In a sense, there was no centralising hierarchy within the Believers. Each band was led by one individual in particular. Initially this consisted of Len Marcus, their initial founder, and another Dark Jedi called Gar, who was a Mon Calamari Dark Jedi. And eventually there was an archaeologist who found a Sith amulet on Almas, and he made a deal with Gar in order to make that the Believers' primary base on that planet. The archaeologist, who was named Garvin Dalquest, who wasn't initially force sensitive, or not force sensitive to the point he could affect the world around him with force powers. This all changed while he was doing a dig and excavating the ancient Sith fortress. He found an amulet that seemingly imbued him with the power of the Force, and unfortunately, seeing this as Sith artifact, it corrupted his ass to the dark side. After he made a deal with Gar, he and Gar's followers moved into the fortress and made it their primary base of study and operations. He also met with a local pirate leader who also joined them as a force to strike out raids against the planet's inhabitants, including a Jedi Academy that happened to be on the planet. As their primary opposition was the Jedi, removing this training ground for new initiates was vital. They could also gain new followers and new Force sensitives from this academy from any Jedi they capture. Now, this did give some centralization to the structure of the Believers under Gravin's leadership. Len still existed with his other group, but he kind of faded into the background for a bit. Whereas the story then shifts and focus to Gravin's Believers as they try and deal with various Jedi around the system and also dealing with the Cullen armed forces. But I also need to explain how Len Marcus around this time once again came back into the forefront, as he had discovered an artifact in the asteroid belt of the Recursion system known as the Dark Staff. Now, with this staff and with the various machinations that were done around it, he would become possessed by this staff, but it would also transport the entire system 10 years into the future. Now, given my feelings on time travel in the Star Wars universe, this is one of the times where pulling things into the future isn't that bad, because the Force does not like past events to be changed. But if you are pushed into the future, it's entirely different, because then any new actions you take in that future do not affect the past. So the Believers were transported 10 years into the future to around the, I'd say, midpoint to start of the Clone Wars, and they began once again to try and deal with the Jedi. And one of the ways in which they did this was to move into the criminal underworld and cause a lot more trouble. And once again, due to the machinations of Sidious, they would also come to occupy an abandoned separatist base and then start using it for their own means, which really meant that the CAF really started to clamp down on their actions and even eventually started to try and deal with their main base on Albus after some actions involving the World Tree, which I'm going to have to explain at some point in its own video as well. But it was around this time as well that many Jedi did join the Believers and became corrupted by the dark side. Once again, the techniques of the Battle Lords came into effect at this point as well. Basically, certain members of the cult attempted to use the Battle Lord techniques to empower themselves to become a version of a Battle Lord. However, due to the presence of the Dark Staff, this actually succeeded in creating no Battle Lords, but instead empowering the Dark Staff even more, as it sucked out the Force essences of everybody who was attempting to do the ritual. I don't think Darth Revan wanted that staff anywhere near anyone who would be having that ritual done to them. Considering the effects it had, not surprising. But anyway, I am going to move on, as there is not really any mention that I've been able to find of the Believers after the end of the Clone Wars. So I can only speculate two things happened. Either the CAF completely wiped them out, or they joined up with Palpatine's dark side wannabes, the Dark Empire, as it would eventually be known in later material. And personally, I do believe that they would have joined that organisation because, well, their whole point was to reform the Sith Order. Imagine their surprise and shock when they realised that the Sith still existed. Though it is equally plausible that Palpatine may have wiped them out as potential rivals, as he did with other strong dark side orientated beings who could threaten his power base. Though, more than likely he'd subsumed them into his own organisations. But hey, don't take my word for it, please go and look for yourself, and perhaps we can have a conversation going. Maybe if you can find any more concrete things of what happened to the believers, I'll be interested to hear, so my own research hasn't turned it up. That being said, I hope you have a good day. My sources will be listed in the description below, and I will catch you on the next episode of The Lost Archives. Take care, Lore Seekers. Have a good day, and may the Lore Keepers ever be in your favour.